Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're going to be talking about the Incredible Hulk, as well as the actor who played him in the 1970s, Lou Ferrigno, who I know, actually. The photo I'm using for today's channel artwork is a photo of me on the far left, Lou in the middle, and my son on the right. At any rate, before we get into all of that, make sure you smash that like button, ring the bell so you know when I upload more stuff. Uh, Leave us a comment. And what am I leaving out? And be subscribed. Make sure you're still subscribed because YouTube loves to unsubscribe people. Okay, so with all that out of the way, the prologue to this one takes place in 1962 when the United States government is working on a new kind of bomb called a gamma bomb. And unfortunately, a teenager named Rick Jones wanders onto the test range. So Dr. Banner runs out there and shoves Rick into a trench just as the bomb goes off. So while Rick is safe, Banner is hit by radiation and becomes the Incredible Hulk. So then the main plot of this game session, um, very simply put, is that just that the Hulk is unstoppable. The military, tries to shoot him and he's bulletproof, and they send tanks after him and he's just bending the barrels around and stuff. And no matter what they do, they can't stop the Hulk. The Hulk just kind of runs out of steam on his own eventually and reverts back into Banner. That's it. That's the game. Um, the epilogue to it then was borrowed from the TV show, which I was a huge fan of the TV show. And that is that Banner ends up hitchhiking across America. No matter where he goes, something bad happens to him that brings out the Hulk. Hijinks ensue, right? So that was it. That was it for this entire game. And I thought that wasn't really enough to necessitate a video about, but I do have a story about how I know Lou and how we met for the first time that people seem to really enjoy. So I thought for the rest of my time here today, I would tell you about that. So back in the mid 1990s, there was, yeah, I guess they don't call that. Now it's called Wizard World. But before that, we had a convention in Columbus, Ohio called Mid Ohio Con. And at the time, it was at a hotel in downtown Columbus. So I remember going there and taking the elevator up to the second floor. And when you would step out of the elevator door there was on I think it was the south wall of the convention floor. So I remember looking all the way to my right. So that would be the south um east corner of the room. And the guy who was there, I think his name is James Obar. He invented the crow, which was a pretty big deal in the 90s. And then, so I was kind of scanning the room from right to left. So as I move left, now I'm looking at the other corner of the room, which would be the northeast corner. And the guy there was Gerard Christopher, I think is his name. And he played Superboy on a live action 1980s Superboy show. And by the way, the opposite corner of the room, which would be the southwest corner of the room, was Dawn Wells, better known as Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island. By the way, at that convention, I asked her out to dinner on a date. I shot my shot, as they say. She said no, sadly, and she still looked pretty good in the 90s, actually. Um, and I figured she was going to say no, right? I'm just of the opinion that Like, I like to be able to have these stories to share with people, and I like to be able to look back on my life, especially now when I'm not in very good health anymore. I like to be able to look back on it and feel like I actually lived and I did some cool stuff, you know? But when you're in the moment, you have to make choices that cause these things to happen, right? So you have to do things like put yourself ass there and ask a childhood crush out on a date, you know? But at any rate, so getting back on topic, in the northwest corner of the room then was Lou Ferrigno. And whereas everybody else had a line at their table, Lou didn't. He was standing behind this little card table kind of thing. He was wearing a white tank top, and drinking a bottle of water. And I was shocked that nobody was at his table. So I walk over to him. And first of all, as a brief aside, so I am 6'4". When I was a kid, I sort of matured earlier than all the other kids and stuff. So it was not uncommon for me to be like a head taller than everybody else growing up. I was always the big guy in my school, which was a very, very small school. So that's not really saying much, right? But nonetheless, I always felt like the biggest guy around. You know what I mean? And like when I was in high school, I played football, I was a lineman, stuff like that, you know. And when this convention took place, I was in college. I was still hitting the gym all the time. I was in really good shape, so on and so forth, right? And I was shocked to meet Ferrigno because his biceps, I'm not joking, were the size of my thighs. And I was like, holy crap, you know, like I just couldn't get over how big he was in person. He looked way bigger in person than he ever did on TV, right? He just had arms like trees, and I'm not even embellishing or anything. They really were. They were like tree trunks. So I start telling him what a huge fan I was of the old TV show and how, like, I remember my first day of kindergarten, I was actually wearing Incredible Hulk tennis shoes that were these green tennis shoes with like purple laces. And they had these things on the side of them that were kind of like puffy stickers. Listeners of a certain age will remember what puffy stickers were back in the day. I don't think they make them anymore. But the pictures, it was like stock art of the Incredible Hulk on the sides of the shoes. It was puffy, you know. At any rate, I was telling him just what a huge fan I was and so on and so forth. And I don't know what was going on because I know him now, right? And I've met him multiple times since then and stuff. And he's always been nothing but nice to me. But that day he was like in a bad mood, so I don't know what might have happened if he had a run-in with a fan before I got there, and maybe that guy was being a jerk to him, or like I just don't know, right? But when I was talking about this stuff, he just seemed kind of not that interested, and he just seemed kind of bored, and he seemed like he was in a bad mood, and so on and so forth. So there there gets to be this lull then where I'm still standing there and we're not for a second we weren't talking about anything at all. And I didn't know what to do. So again, like I said with the Marianne from Gilligan's Island thing, I'm a big believer that if you want to be able to have a cool story to tell, you gotta do something in the moment, right? So I just kind of blurred out, I was like, hey, you want to wrestle? And his gaze had turned from me where he was sort of looking off to his left. And he kind of turns and looks at me sort of slow. And the look on his face was sort of like, are you an idiot? You know, that kind of thing. And he goes, what? And I said, do you want to wrestle? because I would love to be able to tell my friends that I like fought the Hulk. And I used air quotes when I said fought the Hulk, you know. And he does this thing with his eyebrows. I don't know how to describe it, where he kind of lowers his eyebrows again, like that, like, are you stupid? Kind of look on his face. And he just looking at me, sort of like confused for a minute. And then he just looks kind of resigned to it and kind of like tired and just giving in. And he's like, okay. So he steps around out from behind the table. And I didn't expect him to do that, right? I thought he was going to turn me down. And and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is happening." And so the next thought in my head is like, he could kill me like effortlessly, right? Because if at any point you're getting the idea that I'm trying to tell a story of like, oh, there's this one time I kicked the crap out of Lou Ferrigno, or oh yeah, I'm so awesome. No, 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 no. He could just destroy me, right? Um, and I know that. But at the same time, it's almost like the Fight Club mentality of like, how often do you get this chance though, right? And I'm like, screw it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna fight the Hulk. And so I don't know. He comes around like the left side of his table, and I don't know if anybody ever like wrestled in high school or anything like that. I did, but there's like a couple things you can do. One is you can go down on like all fours, and then the other guy, there's this stance he gets into. But then there's another one where you're both kind of standing up and you like bend your knees and you're in like, I think they call it ready stance. That's been, I don't know, 30 years now or something for me. So I can't even remember what it's called anymore. But point being, he does it, right? He gets in that wrestling stance like he's ready. And I'm scared and my mind is just like racing like holy crap, we're doing this, you know? And so in that moment, I decide like, dude, if you're going to do this, like if you're going to get beaten down, right? Like you should go out swinging and like you should give it your all. And it's all stuff along those lines. So I just give it my all. Like I absolutely just charge him. And by the way, at this point, I was maybe 6'4", 250 pounds, relatively lean. I had a little chub on me at that point once I was out of high school because I wasn't playing any sports in college at all or anything. And I was stuck um in art school. It would take all of my time to like be painting in a studio or something like that. And the point is I wasn't burning calories like I was before, right? But I wasn't fat, right? I was just maybe slightly chubby, but it would be very, very minor. Um, but yeah, I bet I weighed about 250. So I run at him full bore, and I'm pretty sure my feet left the ground, right? And I'm thinking, by the way, I'm thinking this is like just psyching yourself up, like I'm gonna try to tackle this brick wall. Like it's not going anywhere. Right? But I'm going to still give it my all, and, you know, it's that sort of a mentality. So we collide, and in the next thing I know, he goes down because of all the momentum and the weight and so on and so forth, which that might sound unbelievable, but I remember one time there was this really nice park not too far away from where I lived, and we would play, um, tag. Even when we were in college, we'd, like, drink a few beers and go to the park in the middle of the night, play tag and stuff. And they had this like gigantic, I don't know what you'd call it, like a two-story wooden maze thing with like rope bridges and stuff like that. I remember somebody way, 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 way smaller than me. And mind you, I was kind of at the peak of my athleticism at the time. They were higher up on that thing and jumped off, and I tried to catch him and couldn't because of the momentum. And they just went right through my arms and hit like really fine little gravel. Luckily, that's what the gravel is there for, and they weren't hurt and so on and so forth. But my point is, like, momentum is a hell of a thing, right? So I mean, I wasn't really thinking that through like that. I was just thinking what I already said, right? Just do your best, right? Give it your all, that kind of thing. So when I go flying at him, he went down, and I didn't think that was going to happen. And I don't mean go down as undefeated. I just mean he is now on the ground and I'm on top of him and we're both shocked. He's shocked I did it, I think. I'm shocked that it worked. I didn't think it would at all. And there's this second of doing nothing, either of us. And then his quick reaction is basically get off of me, right? So he grabs me, and I mean, he throws me, and I am just airborne now, right? And and I'm a huge dude, right? So like I have never been thrown. I assume this is like when you're a kid and you've got a dad or something, they like just throw you in the swimming pool and you go sailing a pretty good distance. I like in that moment, that's kind of where my head is at. And I am like giddy with excitement, and I kind of like laughed as I just sailed through the air. I have no idea how far he got me. And I hit, and we both get up kind of fast. And so a part that I left out is at this point in my life, I belonged to a Star Trek fan club. And Greg Sheets, who I've mentioned on this channel before, he was the captain of the club. And a bunch of our mutual friends were in the club and stuff. And I was by far the biggest guy in the club, like by far, right? And at any rate, so one of the things that Star Trek Club did is they would provide security for conventions. So they were actually the ones doing security for Mid Ohio that year. And from their point of view, their job is super boring. They never have anything to do, so on and so forth. And then out of the blue, they look over and they see me tackle Lou Ferrigno. And they have no idea what's going on. And they even said later they were terrified because they can't stop me if I'm doing something. Back then, I mean, whatever, a person could now, but back then they couldn't, right? They sure as heck can't stop Lou Ferrigno from doing anything, right? And it looked to them like we were really fighting. So they come running over and they are just losing their minds. All of them are like, "What are you doing?" Just they are in utter panic, And so they come over to eject me or whatever, and like I'm laughing, just nervous laughter. And Ferrigno's like, it's okay, it's okay. And like he kind of talks him down. And there's this thing. And maybe if there's some listeners who are bigger guys, maybe you can attest to this. But I think that if you're a really big guy and you're young, there's at least back in my day, I think there was this inclination towards roughhousing, and you just kind of wanted to interact with other big guys, and you wanted to kind of, um, like violence isn't quite the right word, but you wanted to kind of collide in a way that was controlled or mutually agreed upon or whatever, right? And so I think he got it, and I think he understood the whole thing and recognize like, yeah, like obviously he's way, way, way bigger than me, right? I'm never trying to suggest otherwise. But I think he still understood that from I was a big fish in a small pond, basically, right? Where I came from, I was the big guy. And where where and just he comes from Earth and he is the big guy. by more universal standards, but I think he got it, right? And then we both were laughing and we were having a good time. And the thing of him being in a bad mood and all that, the initial thing, he was no longer bored, right? He's having a good time now. And so we hit it off and we were just hanging out for, I don't know, probably like half an hour or something like that. But we got along really, really well. And then that wasn't the only time either. So then I don't know if it was like a year later or 2 years later. I'll just say shortly later, right? Um Mid Ohio Con actually changed its venue. So it was at that hotel in downtown Columbus, and then it went out to Easton Mall, which ironically is owned by Arnold Schwarzenegger, um, who was a big rival of Frignos back in the day, if you're familiar. But so they did it at a hotel out there then. And so I go there, trying to think what year that would have been. I don't even know. But at any rate, we go there um and when I walk in and I'm looking around, I see Lou Ferrigno again. So I'm like, "Hey, it's Lou Ferrigno." And so we start going over there. And this is the second time I ever met him. And as I'm walking up to his table, he finishes signing an autograph from someone or whatever. And he's got a big smile on his face from his interaction with them. And he looks up and he sees me. And I got two guys with me who were players in the game. One is Josh Boggs, the other one is Jason Seidner. And as we're walking up to the table, as soon as he sees me, he throws up his hands and he's smiling when he says it, but he throws up his hands and he goes, "Don't hit me." And I was like, that's awesome. Lou Ferrigno knows who I am. And I was like, I forget who it was. I think it was Seidner, maybe. Was like, "Holy cow, you weren't joking. You really met him. He knows who you are." And I said, "Yeah, it turns out when you tackle somebody, it's a memorable, apparently." He'd never had anybody tackle him at a convention before. So I stuck in his mind. And so I went up and he shakes my hand and it's like and by the way, shaking hands with Lou Ferrigno is kind of like shaking hands with a catcher's mitt. You would not believe the paws on this dog, right? Like every single finger is like a bratwurst. It's just ridiculous, right? And he's still huge at this point. The dude is just like unreal. And so I shake his hand and he like gives me a friendly slap on the shoulder or something like that. And he's like, "What are you doing here this year or whatever?" And I was like, "I don't know, we're just looking around, seeing what's cool. I saw you and love you, dude, and wanted to come say hi." And he's like, "Yeah, it's nice to see you." And we talked. And there came kind of a lull in the conversation. And again, by the way, he's wearing a tank top and he's drinking a bottle of water. And, we're like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna look around and see some other stuff, but I'll come back later and see again before we leave." And he's like, "Sounds good." And we kinda had some people behind us, so they step up to get autographs or whatever, and we leave. And it turns out at this particular Mid-Ohio Con, the other guy that was there was David Carradine, and this is before he did Kill Bill. So I think that his career was at a lower point than after the Kill Bill stuff, right? So he's just there because of what was the show called? Kung Fu, and then the other one's I want to say Kung Fu. Is it The Legend Continues or The Legendary Journey? Something like that. I don't know. Not my cup of tea, right? No offense to anybody that is a fan. It's just that's not my thing. But one of the guys I'm there with, Josh Boggs, is a huge fan. Josh, by the way, owns his own karate studio. He's been teaching karate classes for 30 years, so on and so forth. And so we go up to David Carradine, and David Carradine, by the way, is completely hungover, sitting underneath a sign in the hotel there that says no smoking, and he's smoking. And when we walk up, he's just sneering at us. He just looks disgusted by the fact that we exist, right? And so Josh starts talking to him, and me and Seidner have a sort of a polite look on her face. We kind of hang back. Josh goes up and is like, "Oh my God, David Carradine, you're my hero. I own a karate school and da 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 da. And when I was a little boy, I watched Kung Fu and that sort of thing," right? Josh was so nice to him and just gushing. Like, it was, in my mind, a celebrity could not possibly have asked for a nicer fan interaction than that, right? And the whole time, David Carradine was just treating Josh like crap. And by the way, I think Josh is on the autism spectrum. I think I am too. My kids for sure are. Um, so I'm not saying that in any kind of negative way. Instead, I'm mentioning it because I think there are certain moments where a thing will happen, and for Josh, it's like it's as if the look on his face says, like, does not compute. Like, he just sort of like freezes up and doesn't know what to do, right? And so this happens in this moment because David Carradine just lays into him and is the rudest and meanest I have ever seen any celebrity be ever, period, right? And Josh is just like a deer in headlights. And it almost looks like he kind of wants to cry, but like is so frozen up that he can't. Is was my read on the moment. And so I see this and I'm trying to be a good friend or whatever, and like I don't like what I'm seeing. So I start to mouth off to David Carradine. And I said, "Dude, do you even know martial arts for real, or is that just a bunch of Hollywood bullshit?" Pardon my French. I apologize. I try not to swear on here because I never know when kids might be listening or something or whatever. I apologize. But at any rate, I call him out and I'm like, "Hey, what the heck?" And I asked him if he even knew martial arts. And he goes, "I could kick your," well, I already sweared. So I guess I'll just keep swearing. If that's okay with you guys, I'll just keep swearing. But anyway, he's like, "I could kick your ass." I was like, "Really? That's a stupid thing to say. For all you know, I could be a GD ninja, you know?" And so David Carradine says, "I could kick the shit out of everybody here." And I said, "Really? Hold that thought." And I run over and I go, "Hey, Lou, David Carradine just said he could kick your ass." Said that to Lou Ferrigno. And Lou Ferrigno, when I was running up to him, has this big smile on his face, right? And the smile just fades. It just goes away. And he just goes, "Hold my water." And he hands me his bottle of water and he goes over to David Carradine. So me and Josh and Seidner are just like, "Oh my God, like, is Ferrigno gonna actually like just crush David Carradine?" Which on the one hand would be awesome because he had it coming. And on the other hand, we didn't know what the rules were. Can we somehow get in trouble for that? You know what I mean? So we end up taking off. We were worried we were going to get in trouble. We don't know how that ended, but we took off. Um, and then I don't know, 10 years or something goes by, right? And I have by now told all of my friends these stories, and there were no photographs or anything yet to prove I had ever met him or anything. And of course, as it always goes, Seidner was never around to back me up. By the way, he ended up moving to North Carolina. Josh, um, I don't know what I want to say about that. Josh kind of can be a hermit sometimes. So he wasn't around at the time either to back me up. And so Ferrigno is coming to my town, just passing through. And so at the last minute, we get word that he's going to be there. And so we go to meet him. And then the irony is because it's in my town, like everybody's there, right? Everybody who ever heard the story is there for this. And so I show up to it, and I'm like at the back of the line, and there's, I don't know, there's like, I don't know if it was 100 people in front of me, 50 people in front of me, whatever. Um, and when I got up to the point where I don't know, there were still some people in front of me in line at any rate. Ferrigno starts to see me, and he had been sitting down, and he's kind of craning his neck and looking at me and stuff like that. And so I get up there, and I shake his hand, and again, and at this point he'd lost a lot of the muscle, you know what I mean? Because he, both of us on both ends are getting older. He was getting like skinnier, I was getting fatter. I didn't even know if he'd recognize me. Like, I lost so much hair, I was shaving my head at that point. You know what I mean? I looked way different. And so I go up to him, but he's got this look on his face, like he's trying to figure it out. And I shake his hand and I said, "Mr. Ferrigno, I don't know if you remember me or not." And before I can say anything else, real loud in front of everybody, he's like, "Did you tell all your friends how you kicked my ass?" His words, not mine. And I laughed, and just everybody there, like everybody was like, "Oh my God, it's true," you know? And so I introduced him to my son, and I said, this is Christopher the second. Um, he's not a big guy like I am. He's only 5'9", so on and so forth. But I said, it sort of as a family tradition, he was wondering if you'd like to arm wrestle. So that's what's going on in this photograph here that I'm sharing. This is him. This is Lou arm wrestling with the next generation. I suppose we probably need to get the next generation of Hulk in on it, and try to get my son to go tackle I can't think of his name now, that plays the Hulk in the MCU. Mark Ruffalo. I should tell my son, like, just go tackle Mark Ruffalo. But yeah, so I know Lou Ferrigno now. We're friends on Facebook and stuff. We comment back and forth all the time. Um he knows who I am, and seems to like me. And when he comes around, surprisingly, he's in my area quite a bit. And I always go meet him, so on and so forth. But yeah, that's that. But I have always been a fan of Lou Ferrigno, and I went back and I was rewatching the old 70s Hulk TV show, and I haven't mentioned Bill Bixby at all. Man, Bill Bixby was really, really good on that show. I felt like that show was firing on all cylinders and was insanely good. Really, really good. And I think it's sad how many people now don't know the show exists, or I don't know, they look back on the special effects or something and kind of judge it for that. Um, I think it's too bad. I thought it was a great show. I loved it. So in our role-playing game, we tend to lean a little more towards the show than we do towards the comic version of the Hulk. Where we kind of do more with him hitchhiking and, just what the show did. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's it for this video. Hopefully you're entertained. That's what I set out to do. Um, if so, as always, smash the like button. Make sure you're still subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, and leave us a comment, because that really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. From all of us here at the longest running superhero RPG on Earth, we hope that all of you guys have a great week, and we will see you in the next adventure.